I always thought my daughter Lily's 10th birthday would be a quiet, happy memory, a day of laughter, barbecue, and friends, and it was. At least, it was until 3 HOA goons decided to turn it into a full-blown constitutional crisis. We'd set everything up just right by noon. We rented a bounce house. It stood there like a proud, inflatable cathedral in the corner of the backyard. My wife, Sarah, was stringing up pink streamers along the fence, and I was working the smoker, tending to ribs like a surgeon. Kids ran wild across the 4 acres of lawn. Parents mingled, chatting, holding paper plates stacked high with brisket and coleslaw. The mood was golden, domestic. And then, at 3:07 sharp, I saw them. 3 figures in matching navy polos, the Cypress Haven HOA crest stitched right on the chest. Karen Ramsey, her loyal bulldog of an inspector, Tyler, and a third I recognized only vaguely. Nancy, the silent type, the kind who always seemed to be observing, memorizing. They weren't just on the sidewalk. They were at my gate. And then, without a word, they opened the latch and walked straight in like they owned the place. Sarah caught my eye midstreamer and muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I set down my tongs, wiped my hands, and walked calmly toward them, smiling politely, the way someone does when they're desperately hoping not to deck someone in front of children. Karen led the charge, shoulders tight, clipboard in hand. She didn't even greet me. "Daniel Brooks," she said, as if announcing the opening statement at a trial. "You are in violation of noise regulations and Community Code 12.4. We're requesting that you cease this gathering immediately." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me," she snapped. "This event is disrupting the peace of Cypress Haven. We've received multiple complaints." I gestured behind her, sweeping my hand across the vast lawn. "This isn't Cypress Haven." "It doesn't matter," she said, raising her chin like she was trying to assert dominance over someone a foot taller. "We can hear the noise from within our community boundary. That makes it our concern." Tyler, arms crossed like a dollar store hired goon, added, "And the HOA empowers us to act when community standards are breached." I took a deep breath. "I'm not in your community. I built this house 5 years ago on land I bought precisely outside of the Cypress Haven HOA's jurisdiction. This is private property. You have zero authority here." Karen's smile tightened into a sneer. "This property borders ours. That means you should respect the same rules of civility." She started toward the bounce house, eyes scanning for something to find. Maybe the pink streamers were too bright. Tyler moved to follow her. And that's when I stopped smiling. I walked back inside the house. Not fast, not panicked, just calm, controlled. I headed to the gun cabinet, entered the code, and pulled out my Mossberg. I didn't load it. I didn't chamber anything. I didn't even point it. I just walked back outside with it held loosely in my hands, angled toward the ground. Now listen, I wasn't trying to scare anyone. But sometimes, people like Karen only understand boundaries when they're clearly marked. And nothing defines a boundary quite like a shotgun held by a former police officer on his own damn land. The moment they saw me, the entire mood shifted. Karen's face drained of color. Tyler stepped back so quickly he tripped over a garden hose. Nancy looked like she might vomit. Lily and her friends were watching now, confused. Sarah hurried over to herd the kids back toward the bounce house. "I suggest," I said clearly, firmly, my voice cutting through the sudden silence, "that you turn around, walk back out the gate you weren't invited through, and don't come onto my property again unless I send you a written invitation. You are trespassing. I'm asking you politely to leave." Karen's voice cracked. "You're threatening us with a gun." "No, ma'am," I corrected her. "I'm standing on my property holding an unloaded firearm legally registered in my name, not pointed at anyone. You, on the other hand, are unlawfully trespassing." She started to say something, but her lip was trembling. She spun around and stormed out. Tyler muttered something about calling the police. Nancy didn't say a word, just glanced at me with an unreadable, almost pitying expression and followed them out. I watched them walk all the way down the driveway. Then I placed the Mossberg back in its cabinet. 15 minutes later, I saw flashing lights bouncing off the trees at the edge of the property. Red and blue flashes strobing across the oaks like it was Christmas in hell. 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up the gravel driveway, slow and deliberate. The music had been cut. The kids were huddled near the bounce house. Parents stood in uneasy clusters. Sarah stood by the smoker, arms crossed, her face a hard mask. I stepped forward before the deputies even got out. I recognized one of them, Deputy Alvarez, tall, lean, and good-natured. The other, a middle-aged guy with a clipboard and mirrored sunglasses, Deputy Harper. They stepped out with measured calm. "Afternoon," I said evenly, hands away from my sides. "I assume this is about Karen." "Mr. Brooks," Alvarez nodded. "We got a call from a Mrs. Karen Ramsey of the Cypress Haven HOA claiming she and two associates were threatened with a firearm during a disturbance." I let that sit in the air a moment, then gestured toward the porch. "I've got the footage queued up. Front yard camera, wide angle, full audio. Want to come take a look?" Harper eyed me, then gave a single nod. "Let's have a look." Inside, I played them the footage from the moment the HOA trio entered my gate. They heard my words, tone even, nothing threatening, and they saw Karen spin and flee like I'd just summoned the wrath of God. Harper was stone-faced. Weapon wasn't raised. No threats. No aggression. Property clearly marked. "Any signs posted?" I pointed out the private property. No trespassing signs nailed to the fence and posted at the gate. Clean, visible, legally compliant. "All right," Harper said finally. "As far as I can tell, you acted within your rights. You're not under any HOA jurisdiction, correct?" "Nope. My land stops a good 500 feet before their boundary line. I chose it that way on purpose." "Smart man." Just then, a wail pierced the afternoon. Karen had arrived again, this time in a silver SUV, hair wild, eyes red. "That man," she yelled, stomping toward the porch, waved a shotgun in my face. "He could have killed us." Harper stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the footage. There was no threat, no brandishing of a weapon under Texas law, and no unlawful conduct by Mr. Brooks." Karen blinked, stunned. "What do you mean? He had a gun. Isn't that grounds for something?" "Not when you trespass onto private property uninvited and refuse to leave," Alvarez said, not unkindly. "Frankly, you're lucky he didn't file a complaint against you." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. She made a low, strangled sound like a dying kettle. "He traumatized us. You're just going to let him?" "Yes," Harper interrupted, voice flat. "Because this is Texas. Because that's the law. And because next time you want to enforce your community standards, you better make damn sure you're still in your community." Karen was shaking now, not from fear, but from raw, wounded pride. "This wasn't over," she spat. I didn't respond, just watched her stalk back to her SUV. My wife came up beside me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. Karen didn't back down. People like her don't know how to. And the way she looked at me as she drove off, it wasn't over. It started with a knock at the door, a firm, professional rhythm. I opened it to find a woman standing there with a badge and a clipboard. "Mr. Daniel Brooks. I'm with Child Protective Services." My stomach dropped. "We received an anonymous report regarding unsafe conditions on the premises. Allegations of unsupervised children, potential exposure to firearms, and alcohol use around minors." They mentioned a party. I stepped outside and gently closed the door behind me. I had to let her in. She walked through our house like she was inspecting a crime scene. Lily didn't understand what was happening. Sarah was mortified. And me, I felt like someone had just violated the sanctity of my home and left a business card. The report came back clean, of course, filed as unfounded. But that wasn't the point. That night, Lily asked if someone thought we were bad parents. That one cut deeper than any threat Karen had thrown my way. A week later, I got a notice from the city's building code department. Anonymous complaint. Allegedly, my back deck was an illegal structure without proper permits. I laughed when I opened the envelope. It was insultingly obvious. That deck had been inspected, signed off, and blessed by the damn city 3 years ago. I dug out the paperwork, sent it in, and got no apology. Then came the environmental division. Apparently, Lily's inflatable bounce house had caused permanent damage to protected grassland, my backyard, complete with dog pee spots and a couple of molehills. The inspector looked half embarrassed when he showed up. "We get these sometimes," he muttered. "Neighbor vendettas." I didn't need him to say Cypress Haven. At that point, I knew this wasn't just harassment. It was a campaign. Targeted, coordinated, and utterly relentless. Then the email came. It was from a Gmail account with no name. Subject line, "You're not crazy." The message was short. "She's trying to bury you in complaints. They meet twice a week and plan this stuff." She wants you out. Said it on record. Said you make the neighborhood unlivable. I've attached proof. Just know you're not alone. There was a PDF attached. Screenshots of a group email thread titled HOA Enforcement Strategy. Dozens of messages. Karen at the top, signing off like some bureaucratic queen. He's armed and uncooperative. Dangerous mindset. We need to escalate pressure. If the city won't help, we'll find other ways. We'll make it too uncomfortable for him to stay. There were mentions of calls to CPS, complaints about zoning, noise, even garbage pickup. One message, just one, caught my eye. Nancy Halpern, the quiet observer, responded directly to Karen. We're crossing lines. He's not even under our jurisdiction. This could blow back hard. Karen's reply, you're either with us or against us. Nancy, that meant someone on the inside was cracking. I wrote back to the burner email. Who are you? No reply. But now I knew this wasn't just harassment. It was a siege. And someone behind enemy lines had just knocked on my door. The email came again 2 days later. Different address, same tone. Check your mailbox. Lower left corner behind the plastic flap. Burn it after reading. Tucked behind the loose plastic of our rusty mailbox post was a flash drive in a Ziploc bag. What I found was a digital bloodbath. The drive held over 200 files, email logs, internal HOA memos, complaint forms. It confirmed the existence of an enforcement strategy meeting codenamed Quiet Utopia. One document, an Excel spreadsheet, showed non-compliant homes near border, with mine at the top, marked noise, firearm, problem attitude. This wasn't about the birthday party. It never was. I reached out to my attorney, Sandra Coles. She was lean, sharp, a former prosecutor. Sandra took one look at the evidence and said, they screwed up big. We started drafting a formal complaint, criminal trespass, harassment, conspiracy to abuse administrative process. Then a civil lawsuit, defamation, emotional distress, invasion of privacy. Sandra's team pulled digital footprints, multiple IP addresses for the complaints pinged directly from the HOA office Wi-Fi. They didn't even try to hide it. That same week, I received another email. No burner this time. Straight from Nancy. It's me. I can't stand what she's doing. I'll help, but I need your word. My name stays out of court. We arranged a phone call. Nancy sounded tired, just done. She told me everything. Karen had turned the HOA into her private fiefdom. Anyone who questioned her got pushed out. Nancy forwarded more files, meeting recordings, an incident report Karen had written describing me as armed, unstable, and a community threat, sent not just to police, but to local media contacts. My lawsuit gained traction fast. The headline, Private Property Owner Sues HOA Over Campaign of Harassment. The comments were gold. HOA overreach is the new plague. Finally, someone standing up to these clipboard tyrants. And just like that, the attack stopped. No more mail, no more fake complaints. My inbox was quiet. Nancy sent one more message. She's rattled, gone silent. But if you hit now, she won't recover. We filed the paperwork to subpoena HOA financials. Sandra was licking her chops, especially after discovering Cypress Haven had been using resident dues to cover behavioral oversight programs, code for harassing people who didn't follow Karen's personal vision of suburban bliss. Then, Karen disappeared. 3 weeks, no public meetings, no emails. The HOA went dark. Hope was tricky, but I allowed myself to believe we'd won. The peace felt like a pause. Then one Tuesday morning, a white SUV pulled up to the gate. A stocky man in a cheap suit stepped out, holding a thick folder. Mr. Brooks. Marshal George Klinger, private enforcement agent, acting on authority of the Cypress Haven Property Oversight Council. I'm serving you notice of enforcement under Municipal Order 8B. This property is in violation of community land use agreements and is subject to immediate seizure. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Did you say seizure? You do realize I don't fall under your HOA, right? Sir, you've been formally incorporated into the extended compliance zone via special easement annex filed last month. He handed me a thick manila envelope. I opened it and immediately saw something that didn't sit right. A document with my name and a signature that was almost mine. But I don't loop my K like that. Behind it was a map marked in red, Expansion Zone, HOA Authorized Perimeter Compliance Mandate. And smack in the center of that red blob, my house. You forged this, I said. We're just here to enforce it, he replied. Then go get a county sheriff, I said, stepping forward. Because until I see an actual court order signed by a real judge, the next person who walks onto this property without cause is leaving in a bag. His eyes narrowed. He muttered something under his breath, turned around, and left. I called Sandra immediately. Every signature was fake. The forms mimicked government templates, but badly. The entire annexation attempt was fabricated. No city approval, no planning department signatures. It was all a smokescreen. But the most jaw-dropping piece came next. The data for the forged annexation documents originated from inside the HOA server. Metadata showed the creator, Nancy Halpern. She hadn't just been feeding me intel. She'd been orchestrating her own coup. I confronted her via email. You lied to me. You played both sides. She replied an hour later. Karen was dangerous, unpredictable. I helped you weaken her. That part was real. But the HOA needed a new vision. One that knows how to push quietly, not violently. You could have worked with me. You still can. I didn't answer. Sandra did. She filed a motion to include Nancy as a named co-defendant in the civil suit. We weren't just fighting an HOA anymore. I was at war with a system that had declared itself above the law. By the time we filed the updated civil complaint, we were naming names. Karen Ramsey for harassment, defamation, and conspiracy. Nancy Halpern for evidence tampering, forgery, obstruction, and malicious manipulation. And Cypress Haven HOA for enabling both. Sandra added the final line. Request for court-supervised oversight and dissolution of current HOA leadership. The criminal side moved fast. The prosecutor brought charges within 2 weeks. Karen was booked first. Early morning knock, standard cuffs. Perp walk across her porch while a nosy neighbor filmed from an Elia bush. The video hit Facebook within the hour. Nancy came next. She didn't resist, just climbed into the back of a county cruiser with the cold composure of someone still convinced she was smarter than the room. The civil jury trial was set 6 months out. During discovery, former HOA member Tim walked into our office with a USB stick. Karen made me help cover funds, he said, to pay off contracted enforcement. We were told not to ask questions. He had receipts, showing HOA money redirected under vague categories like behavioral oversight programs. At the deposition, Karen tried to play the victim. Sandra calmly slid forward a printed screenshot. Karen's own email. We'll grind him down until he sells. The only thing he respects is force. Karen went pale. Nancy's turn came. She tried the classic pivot. She went along out of fear. She tried to stop it from the inside. But Sandra was ready. Why then, Miss Halpern? She asked. Did you approve the creation of this spreadsheet? Non-compliant neighbors removal risk ratings, where you personally labeled Mr. Brooks as a Category 1 agitator and suggested psychological pressure be applied to his family. Nancy just stared straight ahead. The judge ordered HOA funds frozen. A motion was approved to audit Cypress Haven's leadership history. Karen's regime hadn't just been tyrannical. It had been ridiculous. The final ruling came on a Wednesday. The courtroom was packed. The judge read through the verdict like she was carving it into stone. The court finds the defendants Karen Ramsey, Nancy Halpern, and the governing body of the Cypress Haven Homeowners Association liable for the following civil violations: malicious harassment, unlawful trespassing, conspiracy to defraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Then came the numbers. The HOA was ordered to pay $480,000 in damages to my family. Karen was personally fined an additional $25,000 for the forged annexation scheme. Nancy $15,000, and barred from holding any governance position for 10 years. But money wasn't what hit hardest. Karen was escorted from the courtroom in cuffs for separate criminal charges related to document forgery and impersonation of a government authority. As she passed by our row, she didn't look at me. She'd already lost everything she built. Nancy stood and left on her own. No cuffs, no escort, just the long walk of someone who'd burned every bridge. Her former allies in the HOA board had voted to expel her unanimously the week prior. Within a month, Cypress Haven was placed under court-appointed oversight. The petty tyranny, for now, was over. Life didn't just return to normal. It felt earned now. We used part of the compensation to put in a new deck, a big one, with space for 20 guests. We put up cameras, lots of them, and one metal sign right at the front gate. Private property, not HOA compliant, gladly. And then came the day. Exactly 1 year later, when Lily turned 11. The bounce house was back. The tables were back. Just before the guests arrived, Lily tugged on my sleeve and pointed at a little wooden sign she'd painted herself. She'd hammered it right under the gate sign, just her size. It read, "If you're not invited, turn around while we're still being nice." I couldn't have said it better myself. That final sign, painted by my daughter, summarized the whole fight. We won because we stood our ground, and we won because we fought systemic abuse with legal truth. So, tell me, in your own community, where do you draw the line between a necessary rule and an abuse of authority? What's the most ridiculous HOA violation you've ever heard of? And if you found evidence of an internal HOA conspiracy, who would you trust? The quiet insider or your lawyer? Drop your stories and opinions below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories of the quiet victories against the clipboard tyrants.